All right. I still don't see Jeff, and I don't see Karen. But I think we'll go ahead and get started, Carol, if that's okay with you.
Go right ahead, and I will see if maybe I can text Jeff.
Okay. All right. So let me, I'm trying to manage several things at once here on this end. So welcome to Mike and Tim and Carney. And as soon as Jeff gets here, we will pull him up. So Mike, I'm gonna ask you some. Well, I'm gonna ask all of you some questions, and then after we're done, you guys talking about the film and anything else you'd like to say, then we will pull people up on the stage to ask questions. But for now, I'm just gonna have you guys as speakers, and so we can get some good time with you guys. So Mike, I wanted to start with you. So the Conservation Game wasn't the first movie that you've made about big cats. The first one was Elephant in the Living Room. So for those in this Twitter space that don't know what that's about, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I sure can. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here with all these great animal advocates and also the investigators and teammates from this film. But yeah, several years ago, I mean, upwards of, at this point, probably 15 years ago, I decided to take on my first documentary, which was not my first film. I've been filmmaking for many, many years. And with this documentary, we explored the American subculture of owning exotic animals as pet. Tim Harrison, I really followed his story heavily in that film, along with the story of a man who was raising African lions in his home in the rural area of Ohio, just as if they are, pets in their backyard. No regulations, no oversight of that, no licensing requirements. And what I thought, with that film might be sort of a 3 or 4 month hiatus from doing the studio released films that I had been doing, actually turned into a couple years going really, really deep into that American subculture. I was happy to say that film ended up becoming the #1 independent film in the country, won many, many awards, and I like to think too it was a contributing factor to seeing a lot of laws changed and a lot of minds changed in the United States there forward, and actually activating a lot more deep, rich conversations around exotic pet ownership in the United States. And something that we'll eventually talk about is something that Tim and I unearthed while shooting that film that was so controversial and was so difficult to actually process, that I actually took it out of the film. I took it out of the Elephant in the Living Room before its release, knowing that it was Pandora's box, really, and that it would probably require its own proper investigation, probably its own film. And many years later, upwards of 10 years later, Tim and I had been actually working on that issue on and off quite a bit for the 10 years to follow, and then finally determined to move ahead in a strong way with that issue, and then ultimately with the film, and that led to the Conservation Game.
Wow, and so you did not anticipate that when you started the Elephant in the Living Room, right?
That's right. It was a one-off film, and actually many things that I experienced, perhaps everything that I experienced in that film was unanticipated, really, to me. But what Tim and I had come across was when we were filming undercover at an exotic animal auction, and you do see that pretty extensively in The Elephant in the Living Room, and it actually explains a lot in that film. But while we were there, I ended up noticing, I remember being right there in the middle of the auction and looking to my right, and there was a very high profile celebrity television conservationist, so-called, standing right there participating in the auction. I had a hidden camera on. Russ Muntz, who's a public safety officer and partner with Tim Harrison, was with us as well. And we have other bodyguards and so forth. And we identified him. His name is Jared Miller. And whereas I grew up on Jack Hanna, and so too did Tim, and many of us, my kids actually grew up on Jared Miller, watching him on Animal Planet. And I think at that time he had some morning Saturday network shows and so forth. That's who they grew up on. So I had seen quite a bit of Jared Miller as my kids were growing up. Ironically, I believe that they could have been watching Jared Miller on TV at the exact same time that I saw him there at the auction and recorded that. Russ then ended up helping us to document as much as we could of his activities there at the auction. And Tim then talked about his encounter that he had with Cindy Huntsman, who had been one of Jack Hanna's right-hand people that you would actually see behind the scenes on television, who had was supplying him with ambassador animals to go on to television. And she would brag about that quite often. Well, she too would attend these auctions and buy and sell animals there. So when you start to see this, it's difficult to kind of process, why are these people here? What's the nature of their business? Is it possible, as Tim says in the conservation game, is it possible that the animals that he's pulling out of people's basements and backyards are actually animals that we are seeing on TV being presented as ambassador animals under the guise of conservation? And so they raised so many questions that couldn't really be answered quickly or easily. And so I ended up shelving that material, actually believing, Tim and I both believe that because of the elephant in the living room and other things that great organizations were doing, that the issue would start to resolve itself and go away. That didn't happen. The issue grew, it became worse, they became more brazen with their activities, and that's when at some point we decided we need to investigate this and we need to expose it. It took about 3 to 4 years with the help of Carney Ann and Jeff Kramer and others.
Wow. So Tim, what is your history with animals for those who haven't seen the films at all?
My history with animals, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah, my history with animals was I've been doing this for over 47 years. I worked when I was 16 years old for a zoo vet here in the area, and back then it was in the early 70s. And we maybe get 4 or 5 calls a year where somebody had a python or something loose in the backyard or something that year. But reality TV came along in the 1995, right around there, and that's when we jumped up to over 112 in 1 year, the most dangerous creatures on the planet. You had to get a book out to find out what kind of snake people were bringing in. Whatever was on TV, it was a monkey see, monkey do thing. It just exploded onto people bringing them in their homes, which we didn't see that before.
Is it just me or did we just lose Tim?
We just lost him.
Okay, I thought maybe it was just me.
I think Mike and I can probably. Oh, there you are, Tim.
What's that?
I was gonna say, Mike, we all know each other so well. We can probably stand in if necessary.
Yeah. Can we go away for a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll say real quick again. I worked for a zoo vet back in the 70s. He brought me into this world. He was the one who would go out with local law enforcement, first responders, when they would run into something back in the 70s into the 80s. And then once he went off and married his high school sweetheart, I got stuck. So they started calling me from the tri-state area to come in when they found something. 1995, when reality TV started, Steve Irwin, Animal Planet, it exploded. Monkey see, monkey do, just like 101 Dalmatians, just like with the show Jackass, people went out and imitated what they saw on TV. They brought in that first year was 112 of the most dangerous creatures brought in that I had to rescue in 1 year period. I used to average only 4. So we saw a big influx of it happening because of those shows. So that's how I kind of got into it. And then becoming a law enforcement officer, firefighter, and paramedic, I started seeing a lot of other officers because we were always the first ones on the scene. It's going to be a police officer. It's not going to be anybody from zoos, or it's not going to be anybody from Jack Hanna. It's going to be a law enforcement officer. So I started getting stories, and I started working with them and finding out that this is a bigger problem across the nation than I thought. It wasn't just locally in Ohio, because we were the worst. We had the no laws. We were the wild, wild west, just like the New York Times called us. Auctions, roadside zoos. We had it all. Pay to play in every mall and every fair with tigers and everything else. But I realized it was bigger than Ohio. It was bigger than Kentucky, Ohio, and Indiana. So then I started reaching out. We started nonprofit outreach for animals back in 1999, going into 2000. And we had to, because it was just getting too big. We needed to get help from other places that could donate a little bit or help us out. So that's how I kind of got started in it. And then I was blessed to have Mike. He read my first 2 books that I've written over the years, or therapy books. I call them therapy books. I wrote them just to get, even though I'm a published author, they came to me to write the books. I felt like therapy, just get those stories out to the general public. Mike read them, and then he approached me and said he would like to try to do a documentary from that. And even when he said, if half of this is true, it's going to be a hell of a documentary, basically. And he was right. I didn't want to do anything with. I was on TV. I used to take the rescued animals on TV. It's just like what you saw in the conservation game, and I was just blessed that the first documentary did so well and opened up the world to this, that it actually fell into this one. Kind of basically was the backbone that got the conservation game going. And Mike is a genius. He's a great storyteller, and I wouldn't do it with anybody except him.
Yeah, I'm sure you. I'm sure you've seen your share of incidents over the years that we'll get to here in a little bit.
Yes. Yeah, Carol and I, but we've had some stories. Yeah.
So, Jeff, what has been your involvement with captive wildlife prior to the conservation game?
Yeah, so it's great to be back with everybody virtually tonight. And my short history is spent 20 plus years in the corporate world working for an aerospace company, and thought we had both my wife and I went to work for our local AZA accredited zoo in the Tampa Bay area at the time, and we thought we had our dream job, would be there forever. We've been involved in animal welfare initiatives through local organizations for decades. And it was really a defining moment in our evolution in the animal welfare world, working for the zoo to see the other, we call it the other side of the zoo. So first 2 years were, a dream job, and then we could start seeing the writing on the wall and the animal welfare issues and human safety issues, and that led us to want to make positive changes and bring solutions to the table. And the solutions were not welcome, so we planned our extraction from the zoo and formed a little grassroots advocacy group outside of the zoo and exposed them for what was going on within the AZA accredited zoo. And then that led to our ideal dream job, which was at Big Cat Rescue with, Howard and Carol and Jamie and the whole just wonderful crew. And that was, all these steps were just an important part of our evolution of understanding the issues so that we could make better decisions, not a right or a wrong decision, just better decisions. And that's been our goal as an advocate, is to just empower people with information. And once I retired from the sanctuary, stepped away, was introduced to Michael Weber, as Tim said, just a visionary genius with regard to just as a human being and his filmmaking skills, and was invited to, they needed a research person for the film. And of course I jumped on that opportunity, and here we are, 4+ years later, and it was a defining moment that continues to lead to other incredible animal welfare initiatives that I'm just proud to be part of.
So I have a question for you. How did you discover that you can match tiger stripes?
So I'll be humble and say I'm probably a little to a moderate amount OCD, just something I've dealt with since I was a teenager. So I actually honed my skills in being able to match things back in the internet days when it first started up in '90. It all related to companion animal information as far as our cat at the time developed a cancer resulted from her vaccination. So it really got me to dig into going down rabbit holes and whether it be tiger stripes or looking for information, or my background is in security. So in security, you're looking for things that are out of place. Sometimes you're looking for things that are, that line up. Sometimes you're looking for things that are different. And those skills and being able to, just the way my mind is wired, being able to match things up, it's the way my eye connects to my mind, and being able to document information. So in the beginning, it was information that related to nothing about tigers. It was about feline immunology. But I can sift through vast amounts of information in a pretty quick period of time, and match those up, whether it be tiger stripes or other information.
Well, that's just a perfect skill set for you to have then, isn't it? For this job.
Yeah, it's a curse and a blessing. OCD is a issue to be dealt with, but it's been a win-win for the animals, because it continues to lead to, thanks to just the whole team and Michael Weber and everybody on the team, it's led to just, I call myself retired, but I've been busier in retirement now in the last, especially post release of the film, that it's led me down a number of other animal welfare initiatives that I'm proud to be part of, and helping out in being a voice for the animals.
I'll jump in just a second and talk about some of the work that Jeff and I were doing. For years on this, that no one will see, and a lot of the material didn't make it onto the screen. But Jeff would do things like, we would have so much imagery, and we would try to identify people who had a particular cat at a particular time, in a particular region, in a certain context. So beyond lining up tiger stripe, he and I would do things where Jeff would find the tip of someone's shoe and then try to line that up to see if that's the same shoe from individual that we saw on television, or the watch on their wrist, or looking into the background to see if you could see through a window to see the time of year that it might be in a particular region, and even the deciduous trees or not, or what have you, so that we can find all this various data on a particular time, a region, an individual, and a cat. And it's really incredible. A lot of the things that he was able to line up that would get us one step closer to putting together really a composite of where a particular animal might be and who may be in possession of it. In fact, one of them actually we still can't find to this day, but we're able to track down this one particular white tiger that we saw on Regis and Kathy Lee with Jared Miller, and able to find it on a particular person's, in their house, I think on their kitchen table. And by looking at that and some other information, we actually know who that person is and where in New York that was. And then we're continuing to try to go further than that. So it's really phenomenal work that he's been able to do. And it's actually been a lot of fun, and it's also yielded a lot of fruit when it comes to trying to track down these missing animals.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Mike. I just did a podcast with, or I should say a Zoom meeting with some college students just last night at a university, and they watched the conservation game in advance, and then we did a Q&A, and I had been reached out to by somebody recently that was trying to identify a picture that was going around social media that was just going viral. That had been viewed over 1 million times of just a beautiful lowland gorilla that was just looking deplorable in a zoo, bored to death, and these little kids were looking out a bubble window, and this group reached out to me and asked if I could identify what zoo that the picture had been taken. And it was just a fascinating path or rabbit hole to go down, and the way I was actually able to, Mike and I spent probably, I don't know, correct me, Mike, but I think the first at least year working virtually, just deciding who we were gonna, what faux conservationists we were going to track and what animals we were going to track. And in this case with the lowland gorilla, the long story short, the way I was able to 100% identify what zoo it came from, which was an AZA accredited zoo, was the fact that there's a bubble window, and in the reflection of the bubble window in the sample picture they provided me, I was able to go out and get somebody that did a blog, and they took a similar angle picture. It's just incredible. And in the reflection of that bubble window, you could see the same silhouette reflection of the building at the zoo, and they matched up identically. So it was a perfect match. So yeah, those are the kind of things I like solving puzzles, and Mike challenged me with the greatest puzzles.
That is fascinating. So I have to tell you, I had to laugh when you were talking about the tip of the shoe and the watch. And I'm sure there are some in this audience that are going to say, yes, yes. So whenever the keepers are taking care of the rehab cats, many times there are Nest cameras in the rehab rooms in the rehab hospital, and you only see the person coming in to take care of the cat from like the waist down. Well, me, along with a lot of other people, have learned what shoes and watches these keepers wear, so we know who's in there taking care of the cats.
That's so crazy.
So Mike, how did you discover that, or how did you know about this unique ability that Jeff had? Did you know that already about him?
I don't remember actually going back. I believe it may have been Howard and Carol, whom I've consulted with actually even before filming The Elephant in the Living Room. We had been introduced together, and they had helped, develop a lot of information for me about what I was about to undertake with that film. And so I don't remember specifically, but it may have been Howard and Carol who made introductions to Jeff. But beyond that, just in terms of the system that Jeff and I developed, is in another one of my lifetimes, I did work for a company called LexisNexis, which is a legal company, and they at the time were working on something for the FBI, and this is many, many years ago. It was very private at that time, but basically what they would do is they would build these visual maps digitally and make all the connections between someone who is a drug dealer and then a vehicle or a boat and a house on front of people and so forth. And it was these visual maps and connections, so very much like Harrison working on the board on the wall at the office there where the investigation took place. It was a digital version of that. And so I thought that was fascinating, and I kind of pulled that experience and brought Jeff in on a system that I use where we create these extensive murals. And so they're very rich just in terms of their content, so their videos and their articles and photos and lots of links and everything. So this thing that I had worked on many years ago that was being made for the FBI, I built myself and then worked on that with Jeff, and we could work remotely on it. And so essentially we have these digital boards that are rich with content. And I would say we have upwards of maybe 20 of them that are incredibly extensive and all linked together. And so that gave us the ability to really visualize the extent of this this world that we were working within, and keep track of all of our material and so forth. And maybe if your listeners are interested, we've been really busy with the release of the film, but what we should do is do some kind of featurette or something, Jeff, where we actually show people behind the curtain so that they can see all the information that we actually have and ways that developed.
Yeah, in full credit to Mike, what all our panel discussions and my Zoom sessions, I use examples of the virtual mural that Mike mentioned. It's just incredible. And you would need 20 or 30 computer monitors. It is exactly like Tim Harrison was using in the film with his Post-it notes, like CSI. It's Big Cat CSI. But Michael Weber had the virtual version of that. And that's what we worked on for the first year and a half, putting all these pieces together. And of course with Carney Ann, doing the FOIA requests, the Freedom of Information requests, and putting all those threads of all these people that were exploiting the cats, putting them together. Because like Mike said, I didn't realize it until afterwards, but if he hadn't had this system in the virtual world, the virtual mural, I mean, how do you keep track of all this information? You'd be lost in you'd be lost in a vast nothingness. So, it was critically valuable. And I use that as a teaching example when I met with college students and others. And back to how we all got connected. It was actually Howard Baskin. I have the original email, thanks to Howie, as Carol would say. I've got the original email where it says, I think I got this person, and I helped Howard and Carol for my entire tenure there, being the background in research on any of the initiatives, battling Joe Exotic and all the others. So Howard just introduced me to Mike, and Mike took the reins, and here we have a whole team of Tim Harrison, Carney Ann, and Russ and Keith, and just the whole group. It's just, as Mike called us, the wolf pack.
That it's just amazing how people come together from so many varied backgrounds to be able to put this all together. So Carney Ann, speaking of Carney Ann, tell me a little bit about what you were doing before you were contacted to be a part of this.
Well, at the time I was a professor at Michigan State University College of Law. I'd been approached to start the first animal law clinic at MSU Law School, and I was the director of that clinic, so I was teaching animal law. And prior to that, I'd worked for a number of animal protection organizations where I had, started out my animal protection legal career focused on animals, captive exotic animals used in entertainment, exploited by roadside zoos, cub petting, all of that. One of our huge targets when I began my work in animal protection in my legal career was Ringling Brothers Circus. And, throughout over the years, I began to get to be a very niche practitioner within the niche. So I just got so focused on big cat issues, and so became sort of just kind of a cat, literally like a cat lady of the law, and took that experience with creative legal and litigation strategies to get big cats out of exploitative captive situations and to reputable sanctuaries like Big Cat Rescue. To my experience at MSU, and I had to really work very hard to remind myself that it was an animal law clinic, not a tiger protection clinic. So that's what I was up to, and Tim, of course, and I had been connected years before because the community that we work in is pretty small, and we all get to know each other, and our paths crossed in the course of the rescues that we do. And that's one unique part of the job description of an animal lawyer is that it's not just shuffling paperwork. We actually participate in rescues, like you see in the conservation game with Nola, the tiger, the white tiger, who is now thriving and doing well at lions, tigers, and bears. But as an animal protection lawyer, I might be on a FedEx plane with a grizzly bear one day, and I might be, going to help out with a big cat rescue on another day. So, so that's something that was part of my everyday normal life for years before I got connected with the conservation game team. But it was a call from Tim Harrison, who said, we're putting together this team to make the Avengers for big cats, and do you want to participate? And I had seen, of course, the elephant in the living room, and was blown away by the work that Mike had done on that. And Tim just needs to tell me. I don't even need to know what it is. I just need to know what time to show up. If Tim asks, then the answer is yes. So that's how that all came about.
Wow. So had you ever done any filmmaking before?
I have a close friend from growing up whose mom is actually an Oscar award-winning documentary filmmaker, and so I've had some window into like her process and her work. And I've of course done a lot of media. I think over the years the significant piece of my work has been working with the media, and I love being able to communicate important messages to people who aren't lawyers. To communicate why people should care in terms that aren't convoluted and legally just like too much in the weeds. So I've worked with Nat Geo, and I've done some different things, interviews and background types of work for certain programs, but much like Tim said, like I'm very, very selective of what I take on, and I turn a lot of projects down based on who I find out else is participating. So, because it's really important, I think, for all of us, and that, one thing that I think that we're all in agreement in, that, we want to make sure that we're always presenting a consistent message to people, and there's our goals are not always the same goal. Like our goal is to end the exploitation of big cats, and that's not the goal of everybody who works in film. So I think we saw that, right, with Tiger King, the reality show. So that's, I'm super picky, much like Tim said.
Well, thank you for that. So I've got a question, some questions for each of you, and if you guys just want to, I'll throw out the question, and whoever wants to answer it can just open their mic and speak, and if more than one of you wants to speak, that's fine too. So the first question I have for you is, what was it like being a part of the team that was actually looking for these lost tigers, these lost cubs? What was it like to be part of that team, and how did you work together to and I know you've partially answered this sort of, but go ahead, Tim or Jeff.
Well, I was just going to say, just like Marty said, we kind of jokingly started calling ourselves the Avengers, because all I have to do is make a phone call to Jeff there. If I'm not phone call to Mike, he's there. We just assemble whatever needs to be done. So this is another time when the Avengers assembled, and it looks like in the future we'll be assembling a lot, because of some of the things that are coming in from our people that watched the film already that are wanting to help out. I was just at the Akron Zoo for 2 days this week, and they had me come up and they showed the film, and they did a couple panels twice, and it was just overwhelming with the ACA people. They're just supporting it and jumping all over it, and now we have a whole bunch more faces out there. It's going to be looking for different details to feed Jeff, as we call it. We need anything, we call Jeff, and just get him on the task. But it was Carney Ann. One of the situations is that, she needs anything, all she has to do is call, because I know for a fact we have been very successful, all of us, at what we do. And with us together, I don't think there is a team they have out there against us that has a chance. So it's very exciting to be able to work with these people. But it's also, when you say, what was it like to go looking for these cats? I've been doing that my whole life. Carney has too. Mike has jumped in here in the last 15 years. And then Jeff has been doing it forever and ever. It's almost like we're on the same page already. It's just bring the Avengers together. Avengers assemble, we come from everywhere, and we're ready to go.
I think that there are a lot of programs, movies, any type of ensemble situation that spends probably a lot of time and resources trying to create the group chemistry that we have. Like, this is truly a family. And we're, it's such a special group. And I think that I think that really comes across when we get together as a group and we have a chance for people to see how we interact all together at one time. Then in the movie, we are communicating with each other on very specific, pointed issues. But as a group, I think that really comes across, and I think that that's part of the success of the film. Like Mike's just absolutely genius vision and all of the individual work that we all did. But then you can't really put a price on a group that that comes together like the way ours did.
Yeah, I'd like to chime in that it's been a life privilege to be able to become friends with and work with, Michael Weber and Carney Ann and Tim and Russ and Keith. You can't even imagine that. And when I've, been mentoring some students here, some college students, they're worrying about what their next step is going to be after their PhD dissertation and what they're going to do with their degree in animal welfare. It's like, you don't need to worry about that. The universe is going to bring it to you. And that's what the universe did for all of us, is brought us all together. And now we're going to maximize that. We're going to be the biggest voice for animals. And this is just the beginning. This isn't just one thing. This is the beginning of just a beautiful and a great and a powerful thing for an advocacy effort to be a voice for the animals.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that as well. And I think there are two levels to this. One is what the audience see on screen. And what's great is you see all the various team members with this ensemble in the film all have come at this from a different and necessary angle that we needed in order to put this picture together and in order to solve this mystery and to take on this investigation. It was really amazing actually to have these various personalities fit together so well that everybody brings something different and unique and critical to the table. But also in the beginning, I think behind the scenes, what I appreciate about the team is the faith and trust that they put into me and into the film and the investigation, because this type of documentary filmmaking is called cinema verite, where the film itself and the filmmaking process, the story is unfolding before our eyes, not telling a story about something that happened in the past. You use archival footage, you get some interviews, and then you put it together. The Elephant Living Room, my next film called The Student Body, and then this one, the minute you start, it's unknown where you end up or where this goes or how long it will take. And so that requires a lot of patience, a lot of trust, a lot of resilience, and the ability just to keep on going when you're in just a dark room, just trying to find an exit. And I'll be honest with the group that we had, that dark room and that exit took years to actually find. And what's cool about it is that no one lost it. Everyone from 3.5 to 4 years later, after we started this investigation, this film, compared to day one, everyone was exactly the same throughout the whole piece. And it's amazing to have people all on board, all focused on a particular effort, and to be that resilient and to have that much stamina and to care about the issues so much and then have that much trust in the film and in the process to be able to stick it through to the end. And it's just a remarkable thing. And as Jeff says too, for me, it's not just the destination, it's the journey. And that journey, at least for me, and I think getting to know and getting to work with these team members, you do become like family, you become lifelong friends. You learn so much through the process from each other. It really is a life-changing experience, well beyond what happens with the film and what we see on screen.
Well, I wish I could just magically put a superhero cape on each one of you, because you guys are all just so amazing, and the work that you've done and the years that you've put into this. But Mike, since you've just had your mic open, let me ask you before we go on. So I'm sure you had way more hours of footage than you were able to use in the film. So how do you decide what to use and what to lay aside?
It's really the most difficult part of the process. I'm a writer by trade. I'm actually a screenwriter as well. So my study and my professional trade is in storytelling for the screen. But when you do things, stories and investigations like this, they don't necessarily naturally fit into the way storytelling for screen, filmmaking works. So that really was a difficult process. For whatever reason, this was the most difficult story and the most difficult film that I could have ever undertaken. The team members know this. I would talk to them all the time and just say, I can't get it. It's so complicated. It's so difficult. This is just not going to fit in work. And I was just always trying to get myself out of this riddle, out of this enigma. Just stuck in a corner. It was just so complex turning this into a film for the screen, and so they know it. And what's neat about this team too is I put in most of the time I put in 20-hour day, and so I always tell the team, like, I'll never ask you to do anything that I'm not willing to do myself, and no one's going to outwork me. I may not be the smartest person, I may not be the most talented, but no one will outwork me. And what's interesting is everybody else on the team, they stepped up exactly the same way. We were all like-minded that way. So in terms of the sheer quantity of the material, in terms of the number of hours that we all put in, is in the thousands and thousands of hours of work and the hundreds and hundreds of hours put just to make the screen for a 2-hour film. That hopefully is the best version of the story and the most coherent version and the most powerful and the most truthful version of the story that I can tell. And I would say for a long time I felt like I couldn't get there, but I finally did. The editing took over a year to edit the film, and I'm very pleased to say that we got there, and I'm more proud of the work than anything else that I've done. I really like the end product. I love the process and the amount of change that we're seeing happen. I've never seen anything like it in the industry.
I'm sure there were so many rabbit holes you could have gone down with so many of the parts of the storyline, and yet the way you pulled it all together, I just thought was just amazing. And yeah, as far as the change that we're seeing, I mean, I think it's just unprecedented. I mean, it's almost like every day we're seeing something new that I think can probably go back to the movie, to the film, and that someone saw that and it's put a spark in their mind or in their heart, and the change is happening. So it's wonderful.
Yeah, I'd like to think that. I think prior to this, I thought that Blackfish was maybe the high watermark. Or seeing a documentary or just a film in general, and seeing sort of a one-to-one correlation between the general public's mindset changing and other things potentially changing as well. And then I think, I've said on panels before, I remember after Elephant Living Room, sitting on a panel with other Academy Award-winning filmmakers. The panel was called Impact Film, and talked about how to quantify the impact that our films had made. And what's funny about that panel is I remember sitting there, and the panel lasted for about an hour and a half, where we would try to quantify that type of impact. Well, I'm very proud to say that with the conservation game, that would take all of about a minute to talk about how extensive the impact of this film had been, all the way from film first premiering in Santa Barbara at the film festival there, where we won the Social Justice Award. It was within 24 hours that Jack Hanna's family announced that he's walking away from public life forever. It was just days after that the Columbus Movement decided to support the Big Cat Public Safety Act. It was as soon as we were going to Washington, D.C. that Rob Portman decided to sign on as co-sponsor for the bill. And I'm also happy to say that we are no longer going to be the cubs at Massillon High School anymore. And so that, after decades and decades, is going to go by the way of the dodo. And in addition, since the premiere of the film, we haven't seen ambassador animals, at least cubs, I don't think animals, period, on morning shows or late shows. This has been a mainstay of American television for 40 plus years, and suddenly and immediately it has stopped. We haven't seen the celebrity conservationists exposed in this film. I actually haven't seen them on television since. I don't know if they have shows anymore. They haven't spoken about this on social media. They've kind of gone dark. So I've never seen anything like this happen.
Grant Kimmerer lost his license to exhibit in New York. So Grant Kimmerer, who was sort of the main supplier of big cats for the shows that are taped in New York, because of his illegal exhibition of big cats and hands-on contact at birthday parties and his disregard for the state of New York's prohibition on offering hands-on public contact with big cats, he can't legally do it anymore. And so that has been a huge change in terms of, and I just don't think that we're ever going to see that again. In fact, now we have legal precedent that nobody can go into a show in the state of New York and offer that kind of hands-on fondling like we've seen with morning shows and late night shows there.
If I remember correctly, they referenced those shows in that ruling and in the paperwork the state of New York put out, and in that they used the word unfit. I believe they said that he is unfit to practice in the state of New York. So, I mean, it's tremendous what we've seen since.
Yeah, can I say something real quick? I was just going to say, go back to the Cove, and I just want to say with Mike's style of doing a documentary and getting information out that's just the average people can it's palatable for everyone to watch, is that this is the first documentary that I know of, and I've watched just about every animal documentary made since the beginning of time. I'm an old man. And it's funny because they say the Cove was this bar that everybody wanted to reach. Just remember, with the conservation game, the guys that were allegedly the bad guys, or I hate to call them bad guys, but people that were doing these things, automatically after Mike showed them the film and sat down with them to explain what was going on, actually within that day decided to say everything on there is true. We are behind you, just like this last few days. They all gave me their cards and want to support what we're doing now. So this is different than the Cove. This actually made more of an impact immediately with the people that were actually, or the people you would think would be against us. Some of the major players are now looking to help. So I think, Mike, that's one of the things that's a big plus and a big, slap on the back for you right there, because the documentary it was a slam dunk, as we called in the police. It was a dead bang. It was right on.
Can I pile on for a second? Because, with Blackfish and the impact that it had, and like Mike said, I think it's been held out frequently as this high bar in terms of animal-related documentary and documentary in general. But SeaWorld did not lose their AZA accreditation after Blackfish came out, but the Columbus Zoo did when conservation came out, and it was directly that decision by the AZA to strip its flagship institution of its accreditation that's so significant. And granted, there was other financial misdealings by the fired CEO and CFO that contributed to that, but the AZA directly referenced what was depicted in the conservation game in its decision to remove the accreditation of that zoo.
Yeah, just to jump on board and just to say that what we're seeing, what we see in the public life, all these incredible things are happening for the animals at the Columbus Zoo losing accreditation and all things taking place. All these, folk conservationists remain on my radar, and I track them to see. And the only one that's actually, back to what Michael Weber was saying, the only one that's actually actively out there is Grant Kimmerer. So we're gonna, he's gonna be on our laser radar. But the things that are happening behind the scenes, I have not been able to track, with one or two exceptions. I've not seen any of them on TV. I've not seen any cats anywhere in social media on TV other than Grant Kimmerer. And of interest is I put out just a little advocacy of my own on grassroots, where I had people emailing, calling Dan Ash, the CEO, president of the AZA, and then the woman that's in charge of animal programs at the AZA, to say, listen, if they're not stepping off the sidelines to, nobody's uttered a peep. None of these people that we've exposed in the film, or none of the organizations we've exposed in the film, other than the Columbus Zoo and the AZA on the one occasion, have uttered a syllable with regard to their complicity in what occurred and what we documented. And so I had them emailing and calling the two people in charge of the AZA. And of interest, as of last Friday, the woman that was in charge of animal programs at the AZA, and I got an auto response because I was putting this information out there. Auto response said she's no longer employed there. So there are things happening behind the scenes that they will never admit to, but it's all thanks to the visionary of Michael Weber and having this just brilliant concept of animal advocacy and the backing of the entire team.
So I want to ask you guys just one more question, and then we'll open it up to the audience. So this is for all of you. Now that everyone has seen the conservation game, first of all, one, what do you hope will happen? And two, how can anybody that's listening to this Twitter space, whether in person tonight or later in a replay, how can they help achieve that goal?
Well, I'll start. What we're really hoping, at least for me at this point, we want to finally see the Big Cat Public Safety Act get passed. It's the year of the tiger. We've seen this. The documentary has exposed the link between all of this fake conservation activity and the big cat trade. It's all part of the same cesspool in America. And it's also a CITES treaty year. In November, 183 countries plus the European Union will meet in Panama City to discuss wildlife trade and trafficking. And our status of allowing the big cat trade to perpetuate here in the United States is really, really diminishing our credibility on the international stage. When we go to those meetings, when we want to tell a country like China that it needs to crack down on the tiger farms, where it turns out tigers just for the parts trade and for traditional Chinese medicine and for wealthy trinket and luxury goods, it's really hard for us to have credibility in those conversations, because their response is, well, at least we know how many tigers we have in China and where they are. And it's a point well taken. So we have to show up to that meeting and with something to show for the last 3 years and pass the Big Cat Public Safety Act. And for anybody who's not aware of what that would do, it's a federal bill that would establish much needed uniformity of law. It would ban cub petting in all 50 states. So that would remove the incentive for roadside zoos and exploiters to engage in puppy mill style rapid, what I call breed and dump, because it's only legal to offer cub petting experiences in the jurisdictions that allow it for approximately 4 weeks, between about 8 weeks and 12 weeks of age for these big cats. So that means they need a constant supply of cats. They become too big, too expensive, $10,000 a year just to feed one tiger. That's not counting vet care or habitat enrichment or anything like that. And these cats get dumped, they get killed, they get placed into the exotic pet trade. And then the other end of the bill, the second important thing that it would accomplish is it would prohibit in all 50 states the private ownership of big cats. So it drives up that market and that place for the exploiters to dump their surplus animals. So this is critical. We have to pass it this year. And I think that like, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I think that that's the number one on our wish list right now is passing the Big Cat Public Safety Act.
Yeah, I'll jump in too. That's exactly what it is. That's the whole, I wouldn't say it was the whole reason this documentary was made, but it was one of the main reasons, the main mission of all of us involved with this was to get this information out so people realize this is bigger what they thought it was, that these conservationists, or I'll just call them like Grant Kimber, he's an animal pimp, and Doc Antle, animal pimp. These people need to be stopped, and they need to be stopped right now. And just like Carney said, China's laughing at us right now. In fact, the exact quote, I think it was Carney, I think it's, they said something about, we got the Tiger King and we got more tigers in Texas in people's private hands. We don't have anything to say or something of that nature about this. It's embarrassing when on the international basis that we're looked at and laughed at as abusers of endangered species. Now with the snow leopards, what stunned me in this film, and Mike can tell you that, I was stunned how many snow leopards were being used and dying before the age of 2, and some within weeks after being brought out and used on the circuit, we call it, and going to VIP parties and going out there and and so that they make these conservationists can make money. It's just horrible, and it needs to be stopped. If you looked at it from standing back, as we're doing now with a lot of people. And I want to tell you, we need more people to watch this documentary. We need more people to get on, watch this documentary, tell their friends, tell everybody, tell your enemies. I don't care. Tell everybody, get on there and watch this. Contact your senators, contact your your Congress people, and get them to get this thing going. Because I'm telling you, I've got a lot of law enforcement people that have run into these animals, and we're the first ones on the scene. And that's why it's a public safety act for animals, the public, and the first responders.
So some of the list of organizations that support the Big Cat Public Safety Act: the National Sheriff's Association, the Association of Prosecuting Attorneys. These are law enforcement agencies. This is not like a radical fringe. This, like Tim said, this is a common sense bill to protect first responders, communities, and cats. And as Ron Kagan says in the conservation game, what's controversial about that? Who's going to argue with that? So what I love to do when people ask me, what can I do and where can I go? I share Big Cat Rescue's link for the bigcatact.com because it makes it so easy. It takes literally 30 seconds to get on there, to get synced up with your relevant federal legislators, and to just ping them an email and say, come on, let's get her done, So it literally takes no time at all. So that's where I send people, to the bigcatact.com.
I'll add something here too. I think Tim and Carney and we're talking about one of the reasons, if not the primary reason, why we worked with Carol in order to be able to allow the film to be available online for free here in the U.S. for a period of time. And by the way, that time is going to expire, so I would encourage everybody to watch the film, share it with their friends, because that's not going to be out there in that place forever. But something else is we've seen so much change happen on television, and just like I think it was Jeff maybe mentioned earlier, we haven't had any statements from any of the morning shows, none of the hosts, none of the producers. The same with the late shows, none of those hosts or producers, nor have we had any statements come out from any of the animal folks who have been bringing those animals on TV on those shows in order to answer some questions that are posed in the film. But we did see statements and did see action by the Columbus Zoo. And the reason that those things look different, I think, is that Columbus Zoo felt obligated because people were asking them. And so at some point to the press and also to the public, it forced them to take official actions, which they did, and then it also forced them to make public statements. And those public statements, they said that the film is true, it's true. They actually saw people, I believe, lose their jobs as a result of it. They've changed their policies. They've done. So what I would encourage people to do is, in order to make sure that what happens on these morning and late shows sticks and it sticks forever, is to find a way to contact them. A lot of times through social media, that's a great way to do it. And ask them if they have any response to what they see in the conservation game. If they know where Jingle, if they know where these various animals are. Ask them if they're going to have Big Salmo, Boots, Jared Miller on their shows anymore. And ask them to come clean and make a public statement as to whether or not they had anything to do with this, or they had any knowledge of it. If they didn't have any knowledge, then let us know that they're no longer going to be doing this, and that they condemn that behavior, and that they are not having these things on TV. Yeah. And so I'd encourage people to do that, and potentially contact through social media the people that are exposed to as well. I think if we do that, if we like the clues, we can force an answer, and then see change and get out, so they can't just ignore for a short period of time and then get back to business as usual after. I don't think they'll do that if the public, not just the film, but the public kind of pushes on them as well.
Jeff, did you have any final words on that?
No, I chime in with Mike and the entire team currently in it. And the Big Cat Public Safety Act is the next milestone, the cornerstone of the animal welfare movement. And that's certainly what I focus on. But I think it's really just the beginning. I mean, this is where we're talking about sentient creatures that are big cats, but this issue is far greater than just big cats. This is about every other sentient species of animal that we're exploiting as ambassador animals. So it's been a great speaking point to be able to go out to the panel discussions, thanks to Michael Weber and the film, to talk about the bigger issue. This is not about Jack Hanna. It's not about the Columbus Zoo. It's not about just tigers. This is about, living sentient creatures that are being exploited in the name of entertainment. I mean, this is 2022, right? So this is a much greater, much bigger issue than just our film, and just a privilege to be part of that. And just to get off my soapbox is that, I would not be who I am or where I am if it were not for, Big Cat Rescue and Howard and Carol and Jamie. They've educated me, they've empowered me. There's been so many times when I was working at the sanctuary where they've empowered me to do things that no normal, Fortune 500 company would allow me to do, to be an advocate. So I'm just full credit to Howard and Carol and Jamie and Big Cat Rescue for empowering me and allowing me to be who I am, and really making me who I am as an advocate. So I'm grateful for that, and I listen, challenge accepted. I'm not stopping.
Well, I'm going to tag on to what you just said in that, if not for Carol and Howard, I mean, I wouldn't be the person I am today either. And to be able to speak, on advocacy, I've learned everything I know from them. And I'm so grateful, and I feel so honored to be able to do that now as, part of my life, part of who I am, to be able to do that. So I tag right on to that with you, Jeff, in that, I think Big Cat Rescue has done that for a number of people, but I feel that right there with you.
Oh, absolutely. And so just a funny recollection from days gone by, most organizations avoid controversy because that's just not what they want to be associated with. But controversy can be a positive thing, right? So I can vividly remember sitting in a staff meeting and somebody bringing up something that was controversial, and Carol said that controversy is my friend, and Howard just chimed in that, well, I think I've met your friend several times, and that's it. It's just about engaging in dialogue. It's about it can't be silence. We have to be engaged. It has to be empowered, And that's what this whole team has done. And thanks to Big Cat Rescue and Carolyn Howard, Jamie, and our entire team, it's just a life privilege. It's a legacy. So I'm grateful for that.
Well, and you were talking about the sentient creatures and, just how we need to stop the exploitation. And I think, the even bigger picture than that is to save the planet. We've got to save these animals. Yes, the tiger is at the top of that food chain, but we need all of them. And I think, this is a start. And the way that we move toward that end of saving our planet and saving, the life on this planet is by, stopping all this exploitation and the damage that we're doing to everything in this world. So I'll get off my soapbox now too. All right, so let's see. Daniel, did you get kicked off? Let's add you back up here. If you would like to ask a question of any of the conservation game team, please put your hand up by clicking the little heart down here on the right, and you'll see on the left of that, on the right of that, there's a hand raising, and I will pull you up. And I will, while everybody's doing that, I will mention that at the top of this, if you'll look at the top of your screen, you will see that the conservation game is pinned up there. And so if you want to watch the film and you've not seen it, or you want the link to share with someone else, if you go to theconservationgame.com, you will find the link there to watch this film for free for now. So do that sooner than later, either yourself or maybe you need to have some friends over for popcorn and everybody sit and watch it, even if you've already seen it before, just to get the conversation going. Daniel, did you have a question or a comment for any of the team?
Not really a question, more of a comment. I absolutely love this film. It's very well made. I'll admit to having to pulling out the tissues many, many times during that film, especially the scene with the tiger cub at the football game. That was just horrible. And I'm also glad to see that things are happening because of this film, that people are starting to get their comeuppance. I guess if I had a question, I would say I know the Big Cat Public Safety Act is more covering a large cat. Once this is passed, are there people working on the smaller cats as well, like say cougars and smaller? Because I know, you get on TikTok and you see these people owning caracals as pets and bobcats and, oh God forbid, servals, and it's like you can't do anything about it. But it's like, are these people going to be held accountable eventually? Because I know they're breeding out these cats.
Daniel, this is Carol, and those people are on my list.
Yeah, and we are seeing, Daniel, the increasing laws in different jurisdictions related to those animals, but also the animal protection organizations are really, really aggressively pursuing litigation related to how these animals are treated and housed in roadside zoos. And like we saw with Tim Stark, the disgraced former owner of the roadside zoo, Wildlife in Need, apart from being levied over $300,000 in penalties and having his license to exhibit animal strip, like, he can't own animals anymore. And the same is true for Josh Flo, who is Joe Exotic's former business partner. And these are, measures that are being taken. So it's, it's not directly addressing those species that you mentioned, but they are being addressed in other ways. So that's, this is all, so much progress is like a multi-pronged approach. The litigation that's happening right now, we have serious precedent-setting litigation happening right now, being brought by organizations like People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals and Animal Legal Defense Fund, where we've seen now new interpretation of the Endangered Species Act, where the Fish and Wildlife Service refused to interpret the Endangered Species Act to prohibit the cruel partial mutilation declaw procedure that we know that these facilities have done with a number of cats, and it's a violation of the Federal Animal Welfare Act. So as we know, the USDA doesn't do its job and just gives slaps on the wrist. And so we're now seeing that for protected species, like the federal courts are saying, no, this is illegal under federal law. You cannot declaw a protected cat. So there's progress that's being made, and all of this spills over. Like, I do think that, of course, tigers are like the most charismatic of the megafauna. I think they're the most iconic of the cat species. And progress for them will yield progress for all, is my perception.
I agree. I think this is just the start, thanks to the visionary of Michael Weber and Carolyn Howard Baskin and the whole crew. This is just the start. I mean, we're seeing change, and this is not the end of it. This is just the beginning. And I continue to keep track. For years, kept track of all the cats, all the way down to the lesser species of cats, and other species. So it's just the beginning.
Yeah,
Well, I see that as well. And also, thank you, Daniel, for your comments. It was very kind of you. And just to echo, what Jeff was saying, it was difficult, and Tim knows this. We dealt with this. It was very difficult, believe it or not, to just deal with the big cats that we did in the film, because Tim and I have stories that we'll share at another time about the reptiles and primates and the smaller cats and so forth. That, as far as the film is concerned, we're left behind, unfortunately. But it's a matter of one of the earlier questions. How do you bring this all down? Take the vast amount of information that we have and larger picture and bigger story and make it into a film. And that's the things that had to be done from my perspective, was we have to just focus just these big cats. Even at that, just very few cats that we did focus on. And just right, this is just the beginning, but we have to start somewhere.
Yeah, one thing I'll throw in there too, with along my piggyback off the rest of you, is that we got to remember Columbus Zoo, they said no big cats and primates. And we all know the Captive Primate Safety Act is in the bullpen right now. And I've always gone by with these little cities and stuff that I've helped write laws that across the country, starting with the city of Cleveland years ago. That's where we started that. Is that there's a dominant effect. Because people start realizing, wait a minute, it's a tiger, but maybe a serval too. Or maybe it's just not right to have them because they're wild animals. With the big cat rescue and organizations like that educating the people, that's the thing. My favorite quote is the quickest way to stop all this and make these people stop what they're doing, these animal pens, is have an educated public. And that's in the process. That's what the Big Cat Rescue does. That's what happens for animals. We try to educate the public to understand that these cats don't live here; they live in the wild. So I think it's just the tip of the iceberg, like everybody's saying. I think it's going to be a domino effect coming down.
Yeah, you wouldn't even believe how many times a day I answer that question is, well, why don't you just turn them loose? And when you mention the fact that they're not native to this country, it's just like people don't have a clue. They just don't realize. And so education is a big part of what I do every day, all day long, and as well as other people that are in this room tonight. And it's I've always said each one reach one, and I think one at a time. That's what we're trying to do is reach everyone and educate them so that they have the best knowledge to be able to make the right decisions for the cats. So, Marcia, did you have a question or comment for any of the team?
Yes, I do. I'm usually a quiet listener, but I did want
all of you to know, Canada is listening. We hear you, and we see. I saw the film in November when you released it through Big Cat, and I can't wait to see it again and share it to more people up here. I'm hoping, maybe, Canada will be able to see it somehow soon. But we see you. We appreciate you. Thank you for your life work. And hopefully we can make progress in our terrible laws. They're pretty terrible up here right now.
Thank you, Marsha. I appreciate those kind words, and I'm so glad that you had a chance to see the film. I apologize that right now it's not available to Canada. Sometimes it's confusing to people where they don't really understand why things are blocked from one country to the other, and it has to do with licensing and so forth. I appreciate your patience there. What I can tell you is that because of those licensing restrictions that we have in different territories, it's actually because there is a deal that's in the process right now with Canada. So if you've seen the film, if you got to see it in last fall, and the States are getting to see it right now, it's because we got kind of a sneak preview that this is coming to many, many countries, including Canada. So just hang in there, and I think we're going to have a big impact when this is released, and I'm very eager to announce here in hopefully the near future what we have in the works for you up there. So thank you very much for your patience. I apologize and take the time.
Karen, did you have a question or a comment? And then I'm going to let you tell everyone who's coming next week, because this is friends of yours, and then we'll wrap up the room. Karen? Karen?
Okay, there we go. What a day I'm having. So thank you everybody for all the information. I kept coming up with questions along the way, and then someone answered them. So I'm not even gonna go over them. You pretty much covered everything. Thank you all. I've seen the film. It's amazing. It's eye-opening and scary and sad, and it brought all those emotions right, forefront for me. And I just thank you for everything you've done. People like me I'm an advocate. I do whatever I can. I work for a couple of rescues, mainly for Big Cat, volunteering online. But it's people like you that go that one extra step that really, really change things, that change the lives of these cats. We try every day, like Deb said. I do answer that question, I feel like 1,000 times. Why can't we just let them free? Or why can't you bring them back? Why can't you drop them off in their native country? It's amazing that people are naive. I hate using that word because I was too. I just didn't understand. In my 50s now, and it's taken this long to really, really, really get it. So I try to educate people that are younger so that they know. So thank you for all you do. We are here backing you. We are here fighting for it, the same thing you are every day. There's so many of us, and maybe you don't even realize how many there are, but think about Carol's main page and how many follow that page alone. So I think we're making strides. I think we're getting somewhere. And I say we because I really do work hard. I'm not on the front lines like you guys are, but I work hard. So as you can tell, there's emotion in my voice because this subject gets to me so much, and that's why I do it every day. But thank you all. I appreciate it, and I'll let you know for next week. Next week we have two gals that are friends of mine. They worked on Nosey's Law here in New Jersey. I'm in New Jersey. I think we're the only state besides Hawaii, if I'm not mistaken, who have no exotics that are allowed to be entertaining. So no more exotics in circuses or fairs or whatever. else they come up with, but that includes our big cat. So Nosy's Law was passed a few years ago, and I was a big part of that with these two gals. One is Adrienne, one is Robin. You're going to love them. I'll send the bios to Deb so she can post it. These two were kind of like you, front lines, making sure they gathered people. We went on protest. We had signs, and we sat outside with bullhorns in front of these circuses in the most horrible of areas. But we did it. And Senator Lesniak, who was the person who, I don't know the terminology, in a state when a senator, Carol or Deb or somebody, what is the terminology in the state when they open it up? It's not a co-sponsor. I don't really remember how it was phrased. When they, what was that?
When they introduce a bill?
Yeah, I guess that's what it was. He introduced it. There was senators, there was people involved with it. That part I'm not good at. Howie is always telling me the true story of that, but I'm not good with that. But these two ladies just were absolutely amazing. So they're going to tell us a little of their journey, how they started, how they got the bill passed. And we were all at the State House the minute that it went through, which was absolutely amazing to know that all that work paid off. Because when I saw all the yays and not so many nays, it was the most incredible moment that I can remember as far as advocacy. So they're going to give us their little journey that they had. And Deb, I guess that's about it. Again, thank you so much from the bottom of my toes to the tippy tip of my head and all of my heart. Thank you so much.
Well, I want to echo that. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your Saturday evening and joining us and being here. Carney Ann and Jeff and Tim and Michael, I really do appreciate you all being here. And everybody in the audience that was here with us tonight. Thank you so much. Do be sure and ask your friends and your family to watch the conservation game while it's still free. If they've not seen it, like I said, have some little weekend party and show the film and get everybody talking about it and to make the call of the wild while they're sitting there right there with you. You can be their support and their cheerleader while they do it. Well, guys,
I just want to say thank you, everybody, and if you'll open up your mic and tell the speakers how much you love them for the hard work they've done.
thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys all have a great evening, and we will see you back here next week at 6 o'clock.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate it.
Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.